All right, well, we would like to be respectful of everybody's time, so we're going to get started here. So, welcome everybody. My name is Molly Simons, and I am the Marketing and Program Development Fellow at the Cold Climate Housing Research Center, or CCHRC. Thank you so much for joining us today for the last class in our spring class series called Energy Efficiency Upgrades That Pay Off. While this is the last class in our class series, all of our classes from this past series and from lots of previous years are recorded and posted online on our YouTube channel. So feel free to check those out there. These classes are generously sponsored by the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation and the Golden Valley Electric Association. We will have a question and answer section at the end of the presentation, but feel free to put your questions in the chat as they come up, and we will get to them sort of all at the end. Before I introduce our instructor, I want to introduce Keith Palchikov. He is the Grid Modernization Manager from GVEA to say a few words just about some of GVEA's programs.
Oh, hello everyone. Thanks for having me here in Golden Valley as the electricity provider, service provider for Interior of Alaska. We're here to assist and help with energy efficiency with our members. And I would like to just share a couple examples. Share my screen.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So again, Keith Palchikov with Golden Valley Electric. Here's a couple energy efficiency initiatives that I'd like to highlight. In around 2018, we changed out all our legacy electric meters and put in high-tech digital microprocessor-based AMI meters across the entire service area. And with that technology, we have provided our members an amazing amount of information that can be very helpful for analyzing electric usage and understanding opportunities for efficiency. We used to, in the older days, let's say, we used to do in-home visits trying to talk to people and understand what they're doing with electricity. Now we can do a lot of that remotely, and the members can do that themselves also without if they'd like to. So through our main website on the Golden Valley portal, you can log in with your own account. This is all confidential information, and the data from your meter, whether you're a business or a homeowner or a renter, partner, dweller, is available in 15-minute increments. That's the smallest resolution. And with that data, I'm just going to point out a couple insights here. There's various ways when you log on the portal, you can display the information, various ways of analyzing it. But a couple simple concepts to look for is what we call our base loading and then the occupant loading. This is an example from my house. So, you know, the confidentiality here is I'm sharing my own usage at my own premise. But in the bottom here is an example of a winter day. It looks like this was January of this year, right after New Year's. So the base load is what a house or business, it's what it would consume if there was no occupants in the house. You know, just to be alive. The house is running, it's staying heated, whatever the base systems are being used to keep the house. Let's say you're away on a vacation, the house is basically on idle mode. So for most people, that would be during the night when they're asleep. So analyzing the usage during that time period, when there's no activity or minimal or no human activity in the house, that's a base load that of electricity that the home is consuming. Trying to understand how much of your bill or how much of your usage is due to that part of your consumption versus something here. You see my hand moving around here. So that is around 6 o'clock or so. That's the occupant loading. So there's families coming home from work, activity, school. turning on appliances, doing cooking, all that. So that load, and it's not the full piece, the base load continues on underneath that. So it's the piece, if you were to subtract out the base load, this chunk on top, that's the occupant loading. And so that usage is attributed to its behavior types, your living, the way your lifestyle, and particularly or perhaps appliances that you have and the age of the appliances. So that's one day. The site also allows you to look at a time range. This is for 1 year. It averages the hours of the day for 1 year. So this is my house averaged over 2024, or basically today back 1 year. So again, here, over the whole year, this would be in the early morning hours, the base loading, and then more of the occupant loading piece. So understanding those aspects of your usage will help you target and work towards electrical efficiency improvements. If you'd like assistance in understanding the data, how to interpret, basics of kilowatt hours versus kW, please contact us. Somebody here at Golden Valley can help walk you through and help you do an audit on your usage. So the other piece is our REDUCE program, which is a very new program. It's a loan fund. It's a pilot project, a loan fund for the loan money to members that are approved. And it is to perform energy efficiency upgrades or improvements. So here's some of the requirements. It's for Golden Valley members that have been connected and paying for power for the last year. They're 600 kilowatt hour per month average. That's a typical average residential usage per month. The loan amounts minimum 500, maximum $10,000 for a 5 to 10 year payment period. There is a 3% interest to cover the administration of it. But what this can be used for, so it's not income based. It's open to any member, and so the money can be used for the capital that's needed to do improvements, new appliances, weatherization, lighting upgrades, and even potentially a solar system. So those are the two items I'd like to highlight. Our GVA, excellent resource for data on usage. Our new REDUCE program opportunities, once you identify a project and how you'd like to proceed, that there's opportunity to have the funding here, and then contact us for more information. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Keith. And Keith will be available for questions at the end, but also just feel free to reach out to him with any questions related to GVEA. So our instructor today is Colleen Fisk. Colleen has been with the Renewable Energy Alaska Project, or REAP, since 2016, overseeing REAP's K-12 outreach, curriculum development, teacher trainings, and adult education on energy efficiency and renewable energy. Colleen grew up on a small farm outside Wasilla, where her parents, also science teachers, instilled a lifelong love of science. This passion motivates Colleen to collaborate with educators across the state of Alaska to inspire students of all ages about energy with lessons and activities in and out of the classroom. We are so excited to have Colleen here with us, and we can't wait to learn from you. So take it away.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the invite to present for you all today. I've been able to join the last two sessions. So hopefully I'm reinforcing and not too repetitive from the last two sessions. Okay, is it sharing right now? I got a weird pop-up and then it went away.
Yeah, it looks great.
It looks great.
Okay, great. All right, and I'm gonna have the chat up so that I will hopefully be able to answer some questions as we go. Otherwise, we'll spend some time at the end for discussion and questions. And so this is energy efficiency upgrades that pay off. And just a little bit more about REAP. We're also a nonprofit organization. And so our mission is to facilitate increased development of renewable energy and energy efficiency. And actually a lot a majority of my work is in the energy efficiency realm for education. And so my work, we're doing education. This is what I oversee, our K-12 class visits, competitions, teacher trainings, adult education. Golden Valley also sponsors our fall energy efficiency competition that we do with students. So I get up to Fairbanks once or twice a year, and that's really fun. And then we also do trainings, capacity for like adult for like utilities. We have a little bit of advocacy at the state level, and this energy efficiency education work I also want to call out. This is through our AIC Energy Smart program, which is funded through the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. So HFC funds this education work for our time and materials and supplies for teachers and students. And so that's us. So just a quick, so that we're all on the same page here, efficiency and conservation, both those terms get used a lot. So the pedantic, this is like the pedantic definitions here, just so that we're all on the same page, is that conservation typically is behavioral changes. So that's the turning off the lights when you leave the room, unplugging appliances. These are usually free, but also a note that it does not have to sacrifice comfort. Oftentimes that's kind of been the narrative is, okay, we have to live in a cold, dark house to be able to save efficiency, to save energy, which hopefully is not the case, not what I'm going to be talking about today. And then energy efficiency is specifically using better technology and materials. So this is our LEDs, our better insulation, the smart thermostats, things like that. And this is like working smarter, not harder. There's usually at least some cost to it, but the energy savings will be long, well, you'll save money long term. And so today, when I talk about efficiency, so again, these are like the specific definitions, but a lot of times, and how I'm going to talk about it today, efficiency and conservation are combined together. It's just kind of energy efficiency all at once. So when I say energy efficiency, I'm overall talking about how can we use less energy, whether that's behavior or technology or materials. So that's what I mean by that today. And there's some great tips if you don't already have seen, if you haven't already seen this energy saving tips booklet that Alaska Housing Finance Corporation puts out, should definitely check this out. Putting a link in the chat here. And so this gives you your really small tips. Some of them are like really common sense, but hey, it's always nice to have those reminders. And some of them are maybe some newer tips. I'm going to go over some of those today in my presentation, but highly recommend downloading and reading this. You can download that PDF for free to check that out. And there's QR code. If you want to have it up on your phone, you can pull that from your phone, but I put the link in the chat. QR code and link go to the same place. So if you see QR codes, that's, some people don't always want to have it on their computer and pull up on your phone. That's what it's there for. So I am going to start out with a question for you all here. I see 40 people other than the 39 other than the 4 of us presenters here today. So my question to you 39, what do you think is the area where we spend the most money on our energy throughout Alaska? And this is true no matter what region in Alaska you're in. Where do you think we spend the most money on our household energy costs? So we're talking in the home, energy costs. So I see water heating, a bunch of space heating. Yep. Okay, great. And that's exactly right. It's our space heating. So no matter where in the state that you live, you have your interior, where I think a lot of you folks may be from, CCHRC, but I know I saw at least one person from Homer. So interior, that's 77% of our household energy costs, as low as 68% in Western Alaska as our energy costs, but really it's, that is a big, huge. So when the question is, what are our energy efficiency upgrades that pay off? Well, it's going to be, most of them are going to be related to heat. I'm definitely going to talk about electricity today and some great tools to help us out. And of course, sometimes we use electricity for heat, but if you ask what are the upgrades that are going to pay off, a lot of times it's related to our heating. So when you want to think about what is that payoff, there's fortunately a pretty simple calculation here. if you want to know if something is going to be worth it for you to invest in, you just estimate your cost of, or figure out your cost of what your upgrade is going to be, and then divide that by your annual savings, what you think you're going to save on that. And that'll tell you, is that payback going to be worth it? Is it a few months? Is it a few years maybe for a larger purchase? Is it like 15 or 20 years? Maybe it's not worth it, right? And so I'm going to be going through some tips and tools to help you figure out what those annual savings could be and how you can make those savings. But that my caveat here is that Alaska is a really huge state and our housing is really diverse as well. So not everything's going to apply to you. So take what makes sense and leave the rest, right? So I'm going to hit on a lot of things, may not apply to you, but I wasn't sure how I was going to be here. And so I'm trying to hopefully have some nuggets that you'll be able to take away from you that'll maybe be new, or some new tools that you can use. And please do throw in your own tips in the chat. I'm always learning from other folks as well. So please do share and ask questions as we go throughout the chat. We can all keep learning from each other. All right, so for our space heating, a lot of folks who are not, and I live outside Wasilla. I'm calling in from our Anchorage offices right now. And so most of our heating is coming from natural gas, is what we're coming from. But of course, a lot of the rest of the state is using more like wood and fuel oil. And so for our space heating, all right, and then there's some fun YouTube videos from this Rural Energy Enterprise guy on YouTube. When you're thinking about that, you want to clean your Toyo stove filters every change of the season. This is a really great tip that just really improves the efficiency. And you want to make sure you don't have furniture or other items around any heater, that are blocking any airflow. Might be around vents or baseboard heaters. If you have a wood stove, close those flues when they're not in use so that you're not just sending the warm air right up out the chimney. And if possible, if you're in an area where you can do this, is have a professional tune your heating system. Now, some of these are not going to be an exact, this is the exact dollar amount that I'll save, but it's these incremental things. Most of these are not going to cost you money, and having a professional tune your heating system can really catch some major issues before because our heating systems really like to go out on the coldest day of the year. So let's try to catch that ahead of time. And a little bit of a throwback to last week's on the maintenance one, but also applies to our energy efficiency as well. So thermostat, if you have a system so first of all, set your heat to 62 to 68 in the winter is kind of the generally agreed upon temperature. This is really going to vary depending on your comfort level. Maybe you have elders living in your home that needs to be warmer. Maybe I have a friend who, this is not me, I swear, is like, she's like, oh yeah, 55 is my house, so she can save money. I'm like, that's way too cold for me. All right. But so whatever that is, generally they say 62 to 68, but depending on your comfort range, 71. No shame here. Okay. It's whatever works for you. What I do want you to, and if you don't have a programmable thermostat, do install one if you have a system that is able to use one, because it makes it so much easier to set this up. And they're pretty inexpensive from your like Home Depots and Lowe's and AIHs, right? Like they don't cost that much. What I do want you to know is every degree you lower your bill, you lower your heat can save 2% on your heating bill. So the lower that you're comfortable, again, don't have to live in a cold, dark house. Okay, whatever is still at your comfort level, you can lower that. And as well, of course, turning it down, when no one is home. And so that programmable thermostat is really helpful, especially if you have a regular schedule and you can use that thermostat to set it schedulely, or if, like, most people are also more comfortable with cooler at night, when they have their bedding, that they can stay warm. So definitely that can make a really big savings. Some of these don't cost anything and can make a really big difference on your heating bill. For a lot of us, myself included, uses wood as for supplemental heat to help reduce those fossil fuel costs, whether it's natural gas where I live or maybe fuel oil where you live. And so basically the role with wood is the drier it is, the more energy efficient it is. Of course, a great bonus is that makes it better air quality as well. So we have less of those PM 2.5s. When you're burning drier wood, you have that. And so to make sure that wood is dry, they say split, stack, and store. So split the wood, especially those larger pieces, so that more surface is exposed to the air. Stack it so it's covered but has good airflow, and store it at least 6 months before use, preferably a year. If you're in a really humid climate, like one time I was in Cordova, they said, yeah, they recommend us 3 years for us, really humid climate. So again, depends on where you're at, but that idea is storing it the longer you can store it. Or in Fairbanks, I know you all have the excess heat that is being used from one of the coal plants so that you can dry out the wood. So you get that bonus, nice dry wood. But the drier the wood, the better. It's going to be more efficient. It's really helpful to know how much you're actually paying for your energy use. And so for heating, that is, well, how much did I pay for those cords of wood? Or maybe you got it all yourself, but sometimes, purchasing some, especially if you're using a lot. How much did you pay and how often are you getting your fuel tank refilled? For those of us who are using natural gas, we have our NSTAR monthly bills. And so we can look at our natural gas bill. And so you want to look for the CCF, which is 100 cubic feet. And so that is how much they're actually using per month. And so that can help you, and of course, the amount that you're paying. And like we were seeing earlier on the GVEA bill, they also have like a monthly usage now. It's not down to the 15-minute increment that a lot of our electric utilities have, but you can see your usage over time on your bills. And so calculating the cost. So in the heat pump webinar, definitely if you're interested in heat pumps, go back and watch that. That came from that CCHRC has already had shared out that recording. But there's also a wood cost heating calculator that the cooperative extension has posted. And so this, the wood cost heating calculator is only for Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, Copper River Valley, Southeast Alaska, and Southwest Alaska. So it doesn't have, for some reason, like interior and South Central, but that's okay because you figure out a lot just from that alone. And so that is, and if you do live in one of those areas, that's great. Or you can find a community that's maybe kind of closest to where you live as a comparison. And so I'm not going to go through those right now. Again, yeah, Rosa put the link to I'm assuming that's the heat pump recording. So definitely check that out if you want to learn more about heat pumps, and that heat pump calculator walked through that. And then you can also check out that wood cost heating calculator as well. All right, so that's our heating systems. Keeping them efficient is really important, but we also want to be able to keep our heat in really well, which is where our weatherization comes in. And so this is a really rough, I gotta say, I can't remember exactly where this has come from because I've used this image over the years, but this kind of gives you a general idea. We're losing heat through our home in a bunch of different ways. And so looking through our windows and our doors and our walls and our roofs and our floors, right, in all directions are areas to be able to lose heat. And so the common heat leaks, and this one is from the Department of Energy, has this infographic. And so this shows some of the areas that are really common for heat loss, such as out through lights, of course, out through your attic, okay, maybe plumbing stack vents, electrical outlets. There's a lot of areas where you can be having heat that is being lost and then drawing in cold air from other areas to replace the warm air that is leaving. So that keeping that heat in is really important. So you really want to be thinking about that insulation. And so of course, anything wet or moldy, and it was talked about last week too in the maintenance one, that wet and mold is super important and for your health to get rid of, but that's also not very efficient. And so replacing that, look for the R value is the number that you're looking for. The higher the R value, the more efficient that something is. So foam boards and spray foam tend to be more water resistant than fiber. And then like fiber insulation, they also have their cellulose insulation, which is made in state mostly from recycled materials as well. So there's different options that are out there depending on your needs, your areas, what your priorities are for that. Oh, wood cost calculator is not working. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. I will check that out. All right, that one came from Kyle. I'll see if I can figure that out. And of course, you want to make sure you have a good plastic vapor barrier. Again, this was talked about last week. It's really important to have that vapor barrier so that you're not then introducing even more moisture to your insulation. And so, and the other thing with insulation is that the attic insulation tends to be the area that is often the easiest to add to and the most cost effective because there's so much that is being lost. So if you have compressed or old or moldy or whatever is going on with your insulation, low R value, your attic is a really good place to add insulation that can really pay itself back, in addition to having the benefits of potentially reducing ice dams on your roof. You're having that reduced heat is another great benefit there. So looking at your attics. Thanks, Molly. So your windows and doors. So there's caulking, okay, which is what these cute little kids in the picture are doing here. You have your caulking, and then you also have like your spray foam, spray foam. And so generally, depends, but generally caulking is less than a 1/4 inch and spray foam is a 1/4 inch or more. Generally, kind of depends, what you have available, what you're looking at, but that's what we look at. You can also use weather stripping on small gaps between moving components, like you have a window that opens, replacing and on around a door, of course, having those door sweeps. If you are using, like me, I grew up definitely a lot with like a towel or blanket on the floor, helping, break down those gaps, reduce that draft. If the door sweep isn't doing enough, you have something like that, then making sure that you replace those so you don't get moisture buildup, especially in the winter. We're tracking in a lot of snow, and so you don't want to have moisture and then therefore mold building up in anything that you may have. I would say probably a general contractor. Maybe someone else has some more experience in that question though about general contractor, roofing contractor be the best choice for attic reinsulation. Yeah, general contractor is going to be, I think, a good starting point for you. And so on your windows, you can, and so what I'll say about windows is that a lot of times folks want to replace windows. Often you can do a lot of repairs for a lot cheaper than just replacing your windows. And so if you already have a double pane window, unless you have a single pane window, single pane, yes, that is almost always going to pay itself back. You want to replace that so that you have at least double pane windows. But if you already have double pane windows, there's a lot that you can do to fix and improve it. And those window contractors some of it you can do yourself, like with this caulking and spray foam. Some of it you can have just panes themselves replaced instead of the whole window. So look into that kind of repair upgrade first, not necessarily having to replace the entire window, which can be really expensive. You can also, I did this a lot when I was renting, was having a window film kit. And so you can buy those are pretty inexpensive, and you can just add that. It's adds sort of like having another pane on your window, and you just need like a hair dryer and kind of get it installed on there. So that's a really simple one to do yourself. Okay, there's the spray foam picture. Window stripping. Got those all the fun photos that we have here, and our door sweeps. And there's the window film. Is that picture there? Definitely use that when I was renting. Reduce those drafts. And so on your walls, again, if you have areas around vents, caulking and spray foam and patching those holes in the drywall are going to be really can make a big difference there for not very much money, you know, $10 maybe for getting the spray foam caulking, that sort of thing. Okay, so our water heating. Is there any questions or quick comments so far on space heating and weatherization tips there? Okay, yeah, keep going then. All right, so next, water heating. Again, kind of like with our house, is turning down the heat to your comfort level. And so often the kind of standard setting is at 140 degrees. But you only need it at 120 degrees. Again, it's your comfort level, depends on your house and how things work. But 120 degrees is the recommended water temperature level. You don't want to go lower than that. There's like some increased calcification that can occur in your tank, or potentially some microbes that might be occurring. Usually calcification is really more of the worry. But the less than 100, you don't have to be up to 140 degrees. Someone jumping in to add something, or just accidental? I think it's accident. Okay, so
Ingrid Towers one that
140 degrees can also be kind of scalding. So again, it's your comfort level. Maybe 130 is more your comfort level, but you can, it doesn't have to be at 140. Now, your water heater may not have a temperature dial, or it may not be super accurate. And so what you can do is, what they say is run your water for 2 minutes, your hot water, just on hot water for 2 minutes. And then you can use a digital thermometer to measure the temperature of that water. And that'll give you a much better idea of what your actual temperature is, so that you can adjust it from there. And then for on-demand water heaters, it really depends. I've heard some really amazing things, great stories. Yeah, someone I knew, like when I was growing up, who had one and loved it, saved a bunch of money. It can also, because it has such a big draw when it comes on, you can get a lot more spikes in your energy usage versus a tank water heater, which holds the water and can store that heat for a longer amount of time. So I think it depends on like how much you're using it. If you're someone who's really low use, smaller family. Yeah, a lot of Europeans use and really like on-demand water heaters. And so generally they tend to be, can be really good and energy efficient. It is, you know, maybe not perfect for every situation. But that energy saving, that 6 to 10%.
On-demand water heater versus
something like electricity or natural gas for your how it is that every year it is that you're heating that water, propane, fuel oil, whatever that looks like. Okay, so some other tips: not letting the water run, especially if it's warm, you know, when you don't need it to be running. And so fixing those leaky faucets and running toilets are really low cost and can have energy savings. You can have those low flow shower heads, add aerators onto faucets. And you can, if you have older water heaters and pipes, you will have to check, not all water heaters can you add like an insulating blanket to it. So you do have to check based on your model what the recommendation is, but a lot of them can. You can add, if you have an older water heater and can't afford to have it upgraded, or just kind of like waiting to save up before you're upgrading, you can add insulation onto it, and any pipes that might be in cooler areas that aren't already insulated. And upgrade and or downsize your water heater. A lot of times water heaters get over sized for a house when it's built, or you might get upsold on something. And typically I say things that are older than 15 to 20 years old probably due for an upgrade. A lot of efficiency improvements have been occurring since then. And so you get, you can have a lot of big savings by having that upgrade. And you'll have to do that, you know, calculation yourself, like, okay, here's my estimated savings versus your upgrade. You know, if you're, and so that is something that you have to consider for yourself, but typically that is where they're looking at that in terms of upgrades. They do have EPA WaterSense labeled models. And so they estimate that that saves 700 gallons of water per year, equal to the amount of water needed to take 45 showers. So that's their typical, what they're saying is a savings on that. And that's coming from the EPA.gov. Okay. And the other one, so looking at my notes here, remembering my little notes, 30 drops of water per minute can waste up to 19 gallons of water per month. So those really small drips can really start adding up. It takes a little bit of electricity to pump that water. If there's any warmth in it, you're losing that water. You're losing that heat in that water. So that is something to consider there. Some benefits to fixing those drips. Okay, so any questions on water heating things before I move into electricity? Okay. All right, so electricity. It is definitely a smaller part of our energy costs throughout the state for what we pay at home, but it can be, there's some really great easy fixes. We usually can measure it really easily and be able to track those changes and estimate our upgrades really well. So this is a great area for saving energy. And this is what a lot of energy managers will say. I've heard this from a bunch of different people. If you can measure it, you can manage it. So thinking about that in terms of any of these energy costs, but electricity can be especially easy to measure. And so you can measure the use of each individual electronic item. There's a few different ways that you can do this. You can look at the nameplate. So just see if it says on it how many watts it uses, like this LED bulb uses 8 watts and this small blender uses up to 1100 watts. You can also use something called an electricity monitor. And so GVEA has some of these to lend out. You can call member services and you can ask for one. Sometimes libraries have them. You can buy them for about $20 off of Amazon. And so electricity kilowatt is another brand. Pony brand is here. There's different kind of brands that you can look. And you can always Google it. Like, okay, what is an average LCD TV use? What, like what, and so you can kind of find, or based on your brand and model, how much electricity these things use. And so this is really important information if you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what are these upgrades that will pay off, understanding what you're currently using and what a different appliance is that would replace it would cost. So understanding how much things use is really important. We saw a great example from GVEA of an electricity bill and what theirs looks like. This is a Chugach electric bill. This is a little bit older, from 2022, but you can see how many kilowatt hours were used. This is someone who's very energy efficient. And you can also find out your total variable rate for that month. And so that's everything except your like flat customer charges or whatever that may be for your utility, what they call that. It's everything else that's this, to that your usage that month times these small fraction numbers. And so in this month, in September 2022, at Chugach Electric, that was 20 cents per kilowatt hour for residential rate. And so this really varies across the state and is going up. Like I think we're closer to 22 or 20, where I'm in Matanuska Electric, we're like closer to 23 cents per kilowatt hour. I think Chugach is similar now, closer to 23 cents per kilowatt hour now. So these rates are going up. Really varies across Alaska. So here are some recent rates for the past several months, everywhere from, like Juneau at 12 cents per kilowatt hour, up to Adak at $1.04 per kilowatt hour. So it really depends on where you live, what your electricity rate is. So it really helps to know what that is. And so and some utilities are really good about posting it. It's really easy to find. Golden Valley is really easy to find their rate. AVEC, it's a little bit complicated with power cost equalization, but you can find their rates. It gets updated quarterly. So some of them are really easy to find, but if you're having a hard time finding your electricity rate, looking at your electric bill and figuring out that total variable rate, you can find it there. All right, so then once you know your rate and how much things use electricity, you can use this great handy electric calculator. So I'm going to put this in the chat, but I'm also going to do a quick demo of this as well. So I'm going to do a new share here. Make sure I get the right tab. There we go. All right. So if you go to this link, this is AK Energy Smart website, and you have your electric calculator. You want to have your electric utility rate. You can want to find how many watts they use. There's a little video if you end up using a Pony brand. There's a little video here on how to do that. And then you can fill this in. So for example, if we're at about 28 cents per kilowatt hour right now for Golden Valley, and we want to compare a, let's say a TV, I've got one of them and it uses, right now it uses about 600 watts. I watch it 3 hours a day for not 6 days a month. Let's say 28 days a month, 12 months out of the year. And it automatically calculates your daily, monthly, and yearly costs on here. So it is important that you know your utility rate and how many watts it uses. Otherwise, it's not going to work for you. But you can also add other items. So if you wanted to compare something, so say you're like, oh, okay, well, I want to get a new TV that only uses 250 watts, and I'm going to use it for the same amount of time throughout the year. And now that only costs me a little over $70 a year compared to $170 a year. So that's $100 per year of savings. And then you can figure out, well, how much did that TV cost? I haven't bought a TV in a while, so I can't even tell you how much a TV costs right now. I don't know, $600 to $500. All right. So if it's $500 TV and it saves you $100 a year, then that's a 5-year payback. So in 5 years, you're going to pay back that savings that you made from purchasing that TV. So that's that idea of having your payback. And so that electricity calculator can be helpful, at least in terms of electricity. It's not quite as straightforward for heating, but this is a very handy little calculator that you can use. And okay, back to our PowerPoint. Okay. All right, so for lighting. So lighting tends to be really big electricity usage. So I visit a lot of classrooms. I have visited thousands of classrooms over the years. And so one of the things that I'll do with like middle school and high school students is we'll count how many lights are in the room and how many watts that each of those lights use. So even with fortunately, most schools have upgraded their lighting to LEDs, so it's much more efficient lighting. But even with LED lights, each classroom can use upwards of 1,000 watts of lighting per classroom. So then I have the students calculate, okay, well, how much is that for the entire school? How many classrooms do we have here? And so you can really start seeing that the lighting can use even more than things like the smart boards or all of the iPads or whatever that they're using in the classroom. And so I think this is something that people have heard a lot. And so I don't want to be a nagger or anything, not trying to be, but I just want to emphasize that this can be a really big cost that we may not realize in our house. And so thinking about that lighting, even with more efficient lighting, it still can cost us a lot. So you're doing those things that we've heard for years of turning off the lights, using your LEDs instead of your incandescents, right? You can also buy your Energy Star fixtures and lamps, and then using timers can be really helpful. So schools have occupancy sensors, or often they have those, or you can have timers on your lights. And so for your timers, like for your holiday lights, your Christmas tree, other string lights are really handy, can save a lot on this. They're also great when you're away from the home for extended periods of time. I use right now, if anybody here has got their starts going for the summer, right? Is it summer yet? Can I start planting? So using the timers so that I can turn the lights on and off for my starts. These can be really handy. Also, if you have heat tape in any of your pipes, so I have a little bit of a water line that goes out to my horses in my barn, and so I have heat tape, but this doesn't have, the heat tape doesn't necessarily have to be on all the time. It depends on your situation, but you could potentially have your heat tape on a timer so that it is, especially, and he talked about this last week in the maintenance one, is that if you have modern PEX tube pipes, then they usually are not going to freeze and burst. And so if you only need water, sometimes, like for example, I only water my horses about once a week, right? That I don't necessarily need the heat tape on the entire rest of the week to be able to keep that thawed. And so that can be something that can help you, because that heat tape can really draw a lot of electricity. So again, depending on your situation, please don't burst your pipes and then say, well, but Colleen from REAP said that it was okay. All right, so know your own house, okay? But consider that could be an area for you to be saving some money if you're using some heat tape. All right, block heaters, I think we've heard this a lot. There's always a big educational campaign about this. Seems like throughout the state, wherever I'm going, like October and November, is use those timers for your block heaters. You only need it on about 2 hours before you're planning to leave for your block heaters on your cars. Okay. And those are these things called phantom loads, which do contribute to that base load that we were hearing earlier from GBEA. And so phantom loads are these things that draw energy, electricity, even when they're not on. So thinking about your microwaves that have a clock on them, or your TVs that they're looking, anything with a remote has at least a little bit of a phantom load, because it's always looking for the signal from the remote. Now, these are not nearly as much of an issue as they used to be. It's because things have gotten so much more efficient. Our cell phone chargers and our TVs, and most of us don't have cable boxes anymore. Okay, so these things have gotten a lot better, but there still are some out there. And so if you're worried about this, there are some things that you can do for those phantom loads. And so using the power strips are great, grouping stuff up. I do this at my home office with my monitor and my printer, and I just have a power strip that gets turned off at the end of the day. You want to identify those, of course, turning off the TV when no one is watching, using our technology for the sleep timer. That is really helpful. Oops. All right, so phantom load, not as much of an issue as it used to be, but there's still some that are out there. So these are some things you can do to address that. So for appliances, your other appliances, the dishwasher, use it if you have one. That use it, and you don't need to have your dishes completely scrubbed and pre-washed before they go in. If your dishwasher is maintained, it has a filter cleaned, it should work even with dirty stuff on it. And run it only when it's full, or I know a lot of dishwashers too have the feature where you can do just the top or just the bottom of the dishwasher as well. On your dryers, clean out the lint filter, not just the one on the inside, but where it exits the house as well. Cleaning it out there. Check the temperature on your refrigerators and freezers. And so the ideal temperature is 36 to 38 degrees Fahrenheit for a fridge. Warmer than that isn't safe for your food, storing your food, but you don't need it to be colder than that. And so, if your fridge is sitting at 33, 34, 35 degrees, you could bump it up a little bit. And then for your regular freezer, maybe not your deep freeze, but for typical 0 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit is what you're looking at for your freezer. And you can get pretty cheap thermometers that are exactly made for that. They're like $5. Let's check into that. And you want to clean the coils, check for leaks in your door seal. And so you can do this by getting a piece of paper and closing the door on the piece of paper. And if it's super easy to pull it out, then your door seal is not working very well on your refrigerator. So that's kind of like a quick check to be able to see how well that's working. And then we'll see, Energy Star program might be going away, but right now it's still here. So while we still have it, you can purchase those Energy Star rated appliances when you're doing that upgrade. And then hopefully that electricity calculator can help you figure out if that upgrade makes sense for you. So you can compare your current model to a newer model and estimate what your savings would be over a year to figure out if it makes sense for you to do that upgrade. Okay, so a note about beneficial electrifications. This is something that people talk about a lot, and it is a type of efficiency. And so this is what that means is replacing the direct use of fossil fuels with electricity to reduce our emissions, increase resilience, lower our energy costs. And so this includes things like heat pumps, electric vehicles, and other electric appliances like our induction stoves or even heat pump dryers. And so it can be a lot more efficient because things that are using fossil fuels, like a vehicle, for example, internal combustion engine is only about 30% efficient at taking that fuel and turning it into something that moves for us, versus an electric car is more like 90 to 95% efficient of taking that electricity and turning it into movement. And so that is a form of efficiency. Now, it doesn't mean it makes sense for everybody, okay? Depending on how much your electricity costs and where you live, but it can be a form of efficiency that might make sense for you depending on where you're at. And there are tax credits for up to 30% of eligible new appliance costs for some of these beneficial electrifications, depending on what it is, up to like $1,200 or $2,000. And so heat pumps, just wanted a quick like kind of note and summary from last week. And so they use liquid refrigerant. They move thermal energy from one space to another. So they're not generating heat like your baseboard electric heaters do. If you think about those, they're not generating heat, they're moving heat. So they're moving heat that's in the air or the ground or the water into your house. And they can actually move it out of your house and work as an air conditioner instead, just like your refrigerator does. And so this really makes sense for communities in temperate regions with low cost, especially renewable electricity. And if you want to learn more about heat pumps, check out this Heat Pumps in Alaska booklet. Put the link in the chat for you here. And that Alaska Housing Finance Corporation recently published, and then of course the video that was posted earlier, the great presentation from last week. Okay, so looking at induction stoves, what the program showed, yes, so there's a difference in the tax credits, so the incentives, so which only apply if you have a tax burden. Okay, so things like schools can't take advantage of it because they don't pay taxes. Okay, but for those of us, or maybe if you have a really low income, okay, you may not be paying taxes. But for those who do pay taxes, then you can get that credit up to like that $2,000 for a heat pump as a rebate on your taxes, but then, or a refund, tax incentive, like a reduction in your taxes. But things like the induction stoves and some of the other appliances, those are rebates that have not yet been finished setting up in most states, including Alaska, where when you buy it, you get, instead of paying the full price, you're getting that rebate when you buy it. So you don't have to wait for any potential tax incentives next year to be able to get that benefit from it. So it's not set up yet. They're still working on it. Unfortunately, it's really slow. Very complicated. I'm not going to get into all of it right now, but that rebate portion isn't there, but the tax incentives for a lot of things are available. And I have another link to that a little bit later on that talks a little bit more about some of those options for that. So I'll get to that a little bit more here shortly. So thanks for that question, Susan. Okay, so energy conservation behaviors free, right? Turn off our lights. It's really hard to change behavior though. It's like let's quit but nagging on that. Let's think about what are the types of changes that we can make that can really last for us long term. And so that is things like, and that may cost you a little bit money up front, but it'll save you in the long run. There are some utility incentives. So GVEA mentioned the reduced pilot program. Matanuska Electric is piloting time of use rate for electric vehicles. Trigatch Electric, Homer Electric, Alaska Power and Telephone have some heat pump rebates in there. I certainly don't know all of them, so check with whoever your utility is. You might have some incentives. And then there's also weatherization incentives. And so these are the tax credits that are available now. Get an energy audit, which I highly recommend. If you can get $150 tax credit. You have your insulation and air sealing up to $1,200. Doors, $250 per door, up to $500 total. Windows, $600. And what's really important is that these are every year. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that. You can take advantage of these every single year. All right. So if you want to maybe replace a window this year and then again next year, right? You can take advantage of it again. However, it is purchase costs, not installation costs. That's an important caveat there. So you can learn more about it there. HFC also has an interest rate reduction program for these efficiency upgrades, and that's where you'll need an energy rater from HFC as part of that. And then they are partially income dependent, yes. But if you put in, good question, oops, didn't mean to do that picture, sorry. Here's the actual clickable link. This is where this Rewiring America is a national nonprofit that can help people figure out what tax incentives and how much you can take advantage of based on your annual income, your annual household income, whether you're a homeowner or a renter. And they'll also have, when those point of sale rebates come into place, they'll also have those that will be part of the calculation. So this is how you can take advantage of that. And I think that's mostly on the upper end. All of us can take advantage of it, but if you have a certain amount over annual income, you can't get the maximum amount of the tax incentive there. Okay, so kind of in summary here, how do you get started? So monitor your bills, measure your usage, get an energy audit if you can. Actually, I think I kind of have energy audit here twice, sorry. But you can do your own home energy assessment and maintenance checklists. You can determine what your budget is and perform some small improvements. And then if you want to do these bigger projects, you can visit HFC's website to get an energy rater. And then engage with your utility. So I know GVEAs and Matanuska Electric's associations elections just went past, but you can, like in other areas, you can vote in those elections. You can talk with your utility board members. And then in terms of engaging with your utility in terms of figuring out what their rebates that they have available, what are their incentives as well. Maybe they can do some virtual assistants like GVEA said. And then track receipts and expenses for next year's tax filing. And in terms of the tax credits, so far there has been no legislation of these going away. Nothing's been canceled, nothing's been taken away yet. And so that is something that we can still take advantage of and have those. So I think we're at time here. So I'm going to stop there and say thank you. There's a little summary. Don't have to be an expert. We can all do this. I certainly wasn't an expert when I first started on this road. You can learn a lot more. Definitely check out CCHRC has some great weatherization badges as well. You can learn about weatherization and doing your own. And we also have an online class that's about kind of basics of home energy efficiency. So I'll put that link in the chat as well. So great resources to be able to learn more. And I do have, put that there. Oops, photo one again. Sorry, but there's the link. And yeah, I think I addressed all the questions that came in the chat. Do we get time maybe?
Yeah, thank you so much, Colleen. This was great. Great to just be here for the presentation and hear all of the questions. If we have any more questions, we can take probably like 1 to 2 at the end here. If not, that's totally okay. But yeah, feel free to put the questions in the chat, or we might just keep going because you did such a great job of answering people's questions during your presentation.
Yes. Well,
Um,
way too much practice presenting on Zoom.
yeah, so thank you to Colleen and thank you to AHFC and GVEA for generously sponsoring today's presentation. Please consider joining our newsletter to stay up to date about events and programs. It can be found on our website at cchrc.org. And thank you to everybody for attending today's presentation, and have a lovely rest of your day.